I was actually at a homeless shelter. There was a time in my life where I became homeless, and I made a choice to be in. That sounds really strange to some people, but it was just I had gone through a lot over several years, and I just needed some time to myself. And instead of burdening other people with taking care of me at a low point in my life, I just went into this homeless shelter. I spent about 5 months there, and I think that was about 2014 or 15. And that's actually where I met an organized crime figure, specifically someone from one of the Italian organized crime groups, and he was from Quebec. And it was, like I said, it was just by fluke. Me and this guy got to talking as much as we could because he spoke mostly Sicilian and French, and his English was not great. So we tried our best to communicate, and I just kind of took care of him. He was kind of like a no-no to me. He was just a guy kind of like from the old country that had a bunch of stories.
Welcome back to the Invest in Yourself podcast. Today I'm joined by Canadian Italian Mafia associate Germano Tomassetti. Germano shares what it was like to be a debt collector for the Mafia up in Canada and how he got close with some other Italian mobsters. Germano would later go on to running scams all over the world. He made a lot of money and even would perform money laundering for other criminal organization groups. He was very fortunate to make it out of this criminal life alive. He ended up writing a book about his story as a criminal named A Winnipeg Story. I highly recommend that book. I enjoyed it. I read it front to back, and he goes into a lot of more detail about his life story. So that book can be found in the video description. Please hit subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed today's interview. And without further ado, let's get into Germano's story. All right, welcome back, everyone. We got a very cool guest on today. Maybe you guys seen him around doing a couple interviews. He just dropped a book, and he's working on a current new project, maybe a documentary or something of that sort. Anyways, it's going to be a film, but he's got a really good redemption story. He was involved with a different amount, all kinds of different vast amount of organized crime, and he was able to change his life around without going to prison or losing his life. So I thought he fit really well with the show. So Germano, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me, and great pronunciation, man. You got my name perfectly.
Oh, did I? I was hoping I would, man. I usually
Yeah,
butcher
no, it's
names.
good.
Well, how you feeling today, man? Thank you for coming on.
I'm good, bro. I'm out here on the coast right now. I'm near Barcelona. The weather is fantastic. It's way different from my city. It probably still has snow today, so I'm very happy to be out here.
Oh man, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful weather. Well, we'll can go to walk us through a little bit of your early life, and then we'll get into the organized crime aspect of things.
Sure. So I was born in Winnipeg, Canada. It's like a medium-sized city for our country. I was born November 3rd, 1988 at the Women's Hospital out there. My father was Italian. My mother was Irish. Both were born in Canada, but I'm talking about roots because it's an important thing for me. But the organized crime didn't really start until I was about 26 or 27 years old. I had a little bit of experience, in the streets and the clubs before that, like teenage years leading up to that. But I didn't get involved in anything, serious or with criminal groups until I was about, like mid 20s.
Yeah, and when that approached you, like, how was that? Like, because you, like you said, you had a little background with doing little things while you were coming up and stuff. But when these guys approached you or you approached them, what was the situation?
Yeah, it was totally a fluke, to be honest. I really tried to stay away from gangs or organized crime. I was around some people, but like I really didn't get heavy into anything. I was always around everything, but like I said, it was kind of a fluke how it happened. I was actually at a homeless shelter. There was a time in my life where I became homeless, and I made a choice to be in. That sounds really strange to some people, but it was just I had gone through a lot over several years, and I just needed some time to myself. And instead of burdening other people with taking care of me at a low point in my life, I just went into this homeless shelter. I spent about 5 months there, and I think that was about 2014 or 15. And that's actually where I met an organized crime figure, specifically someone from one of the Italian organized crime groups, and he was from Quebec. Quebec. And it was, like I said, it was just by fluke. Me and this guy got to talking as much as we could because he spoke mostly Sicilian and French, and his English was not great. So we tried our best to communicate, and I just kind of took care of him. He was kind of like a no-no to me. He was just a guy kind of like from the old country that had a bunch of stories, and I don't think that he was 100% there. I think that he had some mental issues and some physical health issues as well. But we ended up hitting it off, and that is how I first got involved with later on debt collections, was through this man that I met at the homeless shelter, which is an absurd story to a lot of people, but it's true, and that's how it happened.
Well, a little more detail too from your book I read was that this guy was really struggling and like he needed help and like his teeth were falling out and stuff like that. So like you instead of like laughing or anything like that, you just try to take care of him and help him out and like and not no one else really around was. That's what you said, right?
That's exactly what it was. I think that a lot of people were uncomfortable around him because, again, his English wasn't great, and he just, there was times that he would talk to himself, and I got to know later on what he was doing, and to be honest, I'm only 35 years old, bro, and there's moments that I do talk to myself. I don't do it out loud like he did, but those internal conversations, and yeah, I just tried to do, like I said, this guy reminded me of something that hit home for me, like in a sense of like roots. You know what I mean? I didn't have a lot of experience growing up with Italians when I was in my teenage or early adult years, because I grew up with my mom's side of the family after my dad and mom got divorced. So I spent more time around Irish people than I did Italian, but internally, like my culture, my soul, whatever you want to call it, I felt Italian.
Right.
So hanging out with this guy was kind of like a real good walk in that life, and I just felt very comfortable around him. And yeah, he couldn't take the best care of himself. He wasn't like completely falling apart, but yeah, I did my best to help him whenever I could, and I think he appreciated that.
Yeah, and like after that, like what did that lead into for you? Like you said it was debt collection, but how long did that really take for them to reach out to you and the whole
Yeah,
the group
so
he was with?
so the story goes, basically what happened was, this whole time that I had my assumptions of him, just the stories that he was telling me, um, it just seemed like he was hiding, you know what I mean, from I don't know, from life. And at one point he left, um, not just the shelter but the city, as far as I know. And he told me, like, you've taken really good care of me. I think that you're a loyal, trustworthy guy. We exchanged information, and he said that someone's going to reach out to you in a couple of months and see if you want to, take the opportunity to make some money. And I was like, okay. And then, sure enough, a couple of months later, I think about a month and a half out of me leaving the shelter, um, yeah, I got a phone call, and I ended up meeting someone by the airport. And this guy was a friend of the old man that I had befriended, and he basically told me, "Thank you for taking care of him, and do you know what we do? Do you know who we are? All this kind of stuff." And I had honestly no idea. I knew that the guy was, involved in something, but I didn't really have an idea of what it was. So he basically went on to say, he said, like, you're a bravo ragazzo, which means like you're a good boy. And if you want to make some money, like, here's the opportunity. And he handed me two envelopes and told me to look at them after he left. And I did, obviously. And one of them had some money in it, a couple $1,000s, which was really nice at that time because I just exited out of being homeless and I didn't have a lot of money. And then the other one was basically like a list of names, numbers, addresses, and amounts. And after a couple of days of thinking about it, like, it was pretty obvious what it was, but I didn't want to assume. So I talked to him after a couple of days, and then he basically said, "Do you know what this is?" And I'm like, "I think I know what it is." He's like, "Can you handle that?" I said yes, and then I went on to do some collections, and it wasn't. It's not what you think. It's not. This wasn't a Bronx tale. You know what I mean? I wasn't going in. I wasn't beating people up or anything like that. For the most part, I was the guy that was more of a mediator. Like, I went in and I would try to make a deal to come up with some kind of money, whether it was 10,000 owed or 100,000 owed. I'd get sent first, and I'd try to make peace, and I'd try to set up like a payment plan or get some money or whatever it was. And then afterwards, if that didn't work out, then someone else was called in. So I did this for about a year and a half. I didn't have any problems other than one time when I went to collect off someone that I actually went to school with, and he ended up hitting me with like a 2x4. But
Damn.
other, yeah, yeah, it was, it sounds worse than it was. The guy hit me and I tackled him and I gave him a few shots. He started crying and then he asked me why I was punching him. I was like, man, you hit me with a piece of wood. Like, what did you think was gonna happen? But the kid was basically like, Ukrainians are really big in my city, and the kid was a Ukrainian and his dad was connected, and he didn't excuse me, he didn't think that it was a big deal that he owed the amount of money he did because his dad was, who he was. And, he thought wrong because his dad was extremely offended by the whole situation and ended up kicking his ass. But yeah, and that whole year and a half, like I said, nothing really violent. I would do this maybe, let's say, 5 or 6 times a month. I was making between $8,000 and $10,000, which was huge to me. Keep in mind, like I said, I came from being homeless, and even when I had a job before that, it was maybe, if I was lucky, making $2,000 a month. So to be making 8 to 10, I was like living in luxury. You know what I mean? But yeah, I did that for about a year and a half. Made about 150 off of it, and then I decided to walk away from that.
When you were ready to walk away, how did you approach these guys?
Well, I had a friend in my city. So I was collecting for guys that lived outside of my city, but I had a friend in the city that was involved in the life. And he basically told me, guys are starting to hear about you and they hear you're doing a good job and, they might have some other work for you and stuff like that. And once I heard that there was an interest or that there was eyes on me, I already made plans to kind of just like get out before they could ask me to do anything else because um, I think personally that it was going towards either drugs or the more of a enforcer side of debt collections, right? So I didn't want any part in either of that. The reason why I did this is because it was easy, the money was good, but the minute that it crossed into certain other fields or opportunities, I got out of there. And I just basically said, I'm a young guy. I want to start traveling. I want to go to Italy. I've never been to Italy. So I want to start, exploring the world a little bit. And it wasn't a big deal. I think it would have been a little bit different if um, I had said this in another podcast. So I feel like I'm kind of, repeating myself. But if they had asked me to do anything else and I said no, that's a completely different story. But because they didn't have the chance to do that, and I basically said, hey, man, like, I'm getting a little tired of this. I'm going to go take a couple trips and start exploring. When you do it in a respectful way, it's hard for them to say anything about it. You know what I mean?
Hmm. And
Yeah.
so that's when you got your out. Like you eventually had some kind of circle back towards the end of your criminal career with a different mob family, I believe, and we can touch on that a little bit after we give
Correct.
more insight into
Sure.
about your story about like what you did after you left this group, because then you started doing other kinds of different stuff with different organized groups. So what was your plan after this? You wanted to travel, right?
Yeah, I wanted to travel, and I almost started immediately. Like the following year, I went to a couple of different countries, not doing any kind of criminal activity in those countries. I had a couple of scams going on, like really small stuff, like we like cash, empty envelopes and like stupid, really stupid shit that was only bringing a couple grand in or whatever. But I had saved like, I don't know, let's say around 30, 40 grand from when I was doing collections. So I was good for traveling and stuff like that. I'm not the type of guy to get a 5-star hotel and go shopping every day or anything like that. So like the money that I had was good enough for the year, especially because, I'd come back to the city and I'd stay with friends or whatever. I wouldn't, um, rent an apartment or get a hotel room that first year or anything. So I'm doing these little things. I start traveling, and then towards the end, I'm still doing collections every once in a while if it's a big amount because I'm typically collecting like 10%. I get 10% of whatever I bring in, right? So if it's a big debt and I can get someone to pay, 100 grand or 150 grand and just do one shot, I'm getting 10, 15 out of that. So I would still do that every once in a while, like just to have that extra, chunk of cash. And then towards the end of the year, um, and I want to say this is 2016, I make the choice to go to Italy. And I told one of the guys that I worked with back in my city in Winnipeg that I'm going to be leaving and I'm going to Italy. And he basically asked me, do you know anybody out there? Where are you staying? Who are you connecting with? All this kind of stuff. And he told me to go see someone while I was out there. And he told the other guy on the other side that, I was cool, that you could talk about certain things with me and just to like look out for me basically.
And so was this when you were still doing these collections and stuff? Was it still for the same mafia family, organized crime kind of same group of people, or
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
it was? So,
So
so,
go
so
ahead.
you
So
had to you had to reapproach them again, kind of then, or how did you rekindle that? Like because you told
like
them that you're done.
yeah, for the collections.
Yeah.
Okay, so the guy that mostly had me doing it was like a friend of mine. Like he was,
Okay.
yeah, it wasn't just like we talked like twice or three times a week, you know what I mean? So there's probably a time that I just said to him on the phone, like, look, man, if you have anything big, let me know. If I'm here, I'll do it. If not, I'll send somebody else and I'll give him a piece or whatever. So if someone collected like, I don't know, 15 grand for me, I might give them like 3 or 4 grand and keep the rest. It was easy, bro. A lot of it was autopilot, which is what a lot of my criminal life was because of how I went about it. I didn't join any organizations. I wasn't violent. I didn't carry a piece. I didn't have things in my name. I did things very differently from a lot of people. And that's why I never got arrested. And that's why I never had any serious beefs with anybody either, because I kept it peaceful and I kept it quiet, which is what you should do.
And so when you went to Italy, how did that work? How did that what they gave you this connect? They connected you to someone, right?
Yeah, so they connected. I didn't know who it was or what he was a part of, but I basically like, I knew that I was meeting someone from the life. I'll be honest in that, but I didn't know any specifics. So, I spent about a month in Italy the first time that I went out there, and I'd say within the first few days I met this man. I was probably late 20s at this point, and he was probably just under 50 years old. And when I met him, it was like, I'll be honest with you, it was intense. So the first time that I sat down with him, we sat down for coffee, and this guy, like, he was like, no offense, like you. He just asked a lot of questions, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was way more intense, you know what I mean? I felt like, okay, I'm getting drilled here if I say the wrong thing. But it was everything from like, who are you with back home? I'm not with anybody. So how do you know this guy? We're friends. Do you do any of this? Do you do any of that? No. And what does he do? And like all these questions, right? So I think I passed the test. That's basically what it was. We spent a couple hours talking together, and that guy ended up basically becoming my mentor over the next several years because he's a Calabrian guy. He's from southern Italy, but they're based in Milan. His family, he comes from Calabria. His family comes from Calabria, but his son, who was a couple of years younger than me, had lived most of his life in Milan or Lombardy, which is like the area, like the province or whatever, state, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so I ended up getting involved with these guys, and they were involved in a lot of stuff. They were um, like drug trafficking, extortion, murder, everything that you can imagine that a criminal organized crime group, especially someone from southern Italy, would be involved in. And but more than that, because I want to get back to this guy and what he really meant to my criminal life and my I don't know the word for this, but basically my upbringing in the life. This guy broke everything down for me. He taught me about Europe. He taught me about South America. He taught me about money laundering. He taught me about where drugs come from and where they go to and like all this stuff. Now, this didn't happen overnight. He didn't just tell me this the first time I met him. I
Right.
see him several times that year. I went to Italy 4 times that year, and I would see him on every trip. But he was a very intense, mysterious guy. Like, for instance, like he had never been on a plane in his life. He was always taking trains or cars. He just It was almost like he was in a constant state of hiding, even though he was out there. Like, you'd see him at a pizzeria or you'd see him at a cafe or whatever, but he never took planes. He had multiple passports. He was just like this super mysterious international man that I had met. And on top of it, like I said, my mentor that taught me all this stuff. So the reason why I'm giving all this in-depth backstory on him is because it's through him that I get involved in my next racket, which was the money laundering, right?
Right. And so how did that happen? So he just taught you how to do that and connected you with someone, or?
Yeah, basically at first, because I was, the first time I was scared to ask him anything, but after a while we got comfortable. So I just started asking about everything because I was curious, not because I wanted to do it or anything like that. It was just, I don't know, it was cool for me to hear these kind of rackets existed, because you got to understand, like, the European crime is way more intense than like North America, bro. And it's way more international and it's way bigger. It's like way much bigger amounts and everything. So hearing these stories, it's like you're watching a movie. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to absorb everything. He ends up telling me about money laundering. He talks to me about Panama, and I had heard of Panama. Excuse me, but I didn't know anything about it, and I thought this was a thing of the past, like, cartel days with, like, those groups, right, the Colombians and whatever else. I thought this was like done. You know what I mean? And it was something that I only watched in shows. But yeah, he basically told me that he had a good friend out there. It was a guy from Lebanon, but had been living in Panama for whatever, 30, 40 years. And this guy had like real estate companies. He had some restaurants. He basically did everything that this guy was doing over here in Milan and Europe, but he was doing it over there in Central America, specifically Panama. So I end up meeting this guy, this Lebanese guy, and he basically, it's much like a filling out process again, and he just lets me know. He's like, well, if you ever want to, stash some money or anything like that, let me know. And honestly, like, I trusted the guy, but at that time I didn't know that part of the world. For the next several years I would be in Europe only. I'd go to Morocco a couple of times and a couple of other places, but like I didn't really know Latin America that well. And then when I did decide to go, which was, I want to say, about 2.5 years later, after having these conversations, I reached out to the guy. And within the first week that I got to Panama, I had a safety deposit box where I was putting cash. And I had a bank account set up in my name. I had a residency card, not in my name. It was a fake residency card, but it was a nickname that I used throughout my travels. And I won't say what it is, but I'll just tell you that it was the name that my mom was apparently intentionally going to give me with her maiden name.
No.
Yeah, so it was a
Yeah.
good one. It was a good name. But yeah, so when I got to Panama, that at first I was just stashing money there, and in those 2.5 years between going to Italy, getting to Panama, I also started embezzling out of a company in Canada, right? So someone that lived in Canada had basically told me about this corrupt company that was being used to do everything from payable accounts to fake transactions, like all kinds of stuff, right? And I ended up paying a little bit of money to get some information on the people that were working inside the office, like the CFO, accountants, that kind of stuff. And then we basically pressed them, and I ended up setting something really nice for myself up where I was, from that alone, I was doing around $250,000 a year from the embezzlement out of this company in Canada.
Damn. What did you have to do though? Like, what was your part? Like when you had to do some like illegal things, like with this scam in particular. Like, what do you do? Like, I know a lot of it's not a whole lot of work, but it's just
No.
what what is the, I guess, the thing that you do to get away with it?
Well, extortion. So I mean, like, that's how it started, right? It was basically, we had information on this person that was, like I said, the CFO, but this person also worked in a prison before, in Canada, and had been smuggling drugs into this prison and got caught. And the prison, instead of giving any penalties towards this person, decided to save face and just fire them. for some other stupid fucking reason. But we had people inside of the jail, and we had people that knew what actually happened, and if it came out, this person would be serving some serious time. So we had all kinds of information on a lot of the people that were working inside, and we also knew that the company was already being used for this. So one of the owners there was two brothers that owned the company. One of the owners had basically racked up accumulated a bunch of debt over several years, just gambling loans, cocaine debts, all this kind of stuff. And eventually, one of these organized crime groups got him for too much, and they said, "We're going to start using your company." Where they basically started milking the company out, and the company itself was doing. I can't say like because I don't know exactly how much, but probably the double digits in millions a year. So it may seem like a lot was being taken out, but the way that they had it set up was just that, um, like for I'll talk about myself. I don't want to talk about everything else, but I had like an insurance company set up, and it was a payable account, and that's how the money came to me. So my money was already, let's say, washed a couple of times before it even hit the insurance account, and then I would get it out another way. I'm not going to say exactly what that is because this is all very fresh. You got to understand that like the biggest difference between me and the people that you've talked to, which are, by the way, some great guests. I love a lot of the people that you've had on there. I think
Thanks.
that's amazing stories. But yeah, the biggest difference is, first of all, I'm younger. This is more recent. Like we're talking within the last 5 years, all of this has happened. And I didn't go to jail, and I didn't inform, and I wasn't actually initiated into that life either. So a lot of things make it really different, and I think that I'm trailing off with this here, but you mentioned at the beginning I'm working on some other things, right? We're doing the
Mhm.
documentary out here. That's why I'm out here right now. But that's one of the real main themes of this documentary is that um, crime and criminals isn't always what you think it looks like. It's not what guys like you and I grew up watching: A Bronx Tale, Goodfellas, Casino, all the greats, all the classics. A lot of that, maybe it's still true in like American organized crime, Italian American organized crime, but in Canada, for instance, and this generation specifically, it looks way different. You know what I mean? I don't have to have like tattoos on my face. I don't have to put in work and kill people. I don't have to do all these things to be a good criminal. In fact, doing the opposite of all of that is what made me a good criminal and what made me survive as long as I did. Now, today, I choose to talk about it. I wrote a book about it. I'm going to do a documentary about it, and then I'm going to close that chapter of my life. But the reality is, and this is not out of ego or anything like that, it's out of basic facts of my history, is that I would not have gotten caught. Maybe I will now because I'm talking about it, but I would not have gotten caught like if I didn't talk at all. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
maybe that'll bite me in the ass later on. But the reality is, I wanted my story to be told the way I wanted it to be told. I didn't want, to be sitting from a cell in 10 years and have to talk about something that happened 15 years ago. I'm going to talk about what happened right now. I'm going to tell you the truth about it. And my whole thing with all of this is like, my goal here is not to influence people. It's not to flex. It's not to say, oh, look, this is I'm not trying to glorify the life or anything like that. I'm telling my story. This is what happened. I don't care if you believe it. I don't care if you like it. There's lots of people that come from the world that I was in where they're on one side or the other. So either like they made money or they're violent, right? That's very typical. And you hear that in a lot of people's stories. I'm one of the guys that made money. I didn't have to be violent. I did some gangster things in my days, but I did not walk around like that. I did not. I wasn't looking for violence. I didn't want a name. I didn't want street cred. I didn't want any of that stuff. You know what I mean? So, sorry. I know we trailed off there, but I know I only got like 20, 30 minutes left here. So,
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to cover though too. So that's what I wanted to bring up because the fact that you just got out of crime recently, it's
yeah,
different completely from all the people that I've interviewed. And like, as there's not a whole lot of recent people that have came out and talked about their stuff. Whether they have, it's usually if they got busted. But in your
yeah,
case, you didn't. So you still risk that chance. So I understand why you wouldn't want to talk or involve a bunch of other people in it, or names or groups,
Well,
all that stuff.
well, and that's
But
another thing. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think that with this podcast world and true crime, we get so comfortable and we get so used to people informing and saying names and saying organizations, that when you put someone like me in this platform, one of the things that I was really good at was not talking. So it can be really annoying for people. And like, I get it, man, because I'm a fan as well. I'm a viewer as well. I listen to podcasts. I follow true crime. I'm Italian blooded, bro. I love that history, you know. But at the same time, I took an oath to myself a long time ago that, like, if shit ever hits the fan for me, I'm gonna take my consequences as they come. Like, I chose this. I wasn't one of these guys that was born into the life and forced to do this, and oh, sad story. No, I made a choice one day that I wanted to make money, and I was going to rub shoulders with some guys, and I also told myself, like I said, if shit hits the fan, then I'm going to go do my time or deal with whatever I got to deal with. And in the process, I'm not saying names, I'm not saying organizations. I think that there's a lot of people that could watch this podcast or the other podcast I did or the documentary, and the people from that life are going to know whether I'm full of shit or whether I'm talking some real things. And I think the respect that I've received from guys that I didn't know, right? The guys that were in my inbox, not the guys commenting on YouTube, because those guys, they're losers. They don't do anything with their lives. Thank you for the view. Thank you for the comment. You're helping the algorithm. But at the same time, like, you don't exist in this world, so I don't care. But a lot of the guys that reached out to me in my inbox, guys from South Africa, from Italy, from Australia, all over the place, serious guys, they all told me, man, good job. You kept your mouth shut. You got an interesting story, but you didn't have to say too much about it. You said, I'll talk about my shit, and anything that I was involved in has to be finished. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to talk about something that's currently happening right now with another group of guys. I'm just not like that. But I'll tell you what we did in the past. I'm not going to break it all down for you so you can go grab these guys, but I'll tell you what we did so you can know the details. You know what I mean?
and so what do you think like the difference is? Because I mean, you tell me. I mean, you probably know better. Like, I've never really seen the like Canadian mob guys or any of them talking, like doing interviews or anything like that. Like, you're the first one I've ever seen like on
Here,
YouTube connected to it.
here's why. Because I never was a part of that life. That's why I can talk about it. Now, if there's ever any confusion with that, with what I mean, let me explain. I brushed shoulders with guys. I was technically an associate. I'm now using that for the book, and because honestly, when I did the podcast, and I'll leave the name out of it, but when I did the podcast that you saw me on, when I first saw the title of it, I was like, is this guy fucking retarded? I was like, why would anyone say that? Like, you know what I mean? Because I didn't say that. When I contacted him and I wanted to do it, I did not say that I was a mafia associate. I did not say that I was this, and that, but he just branded me that. The truth is, technically, I am an associate. And what I mean by that is I worked with these guys and we made money together. But I did not join any organizations, and I was not how can I say this? I don't have to follow the same laws that they do. I still do, right? I don't say names. I don't say organizations. I won't give up anybody. I won't go talk to the police. I won't do any of that. But it's because I'm just outside of it, and because I've made good contacts and gotten a lot of respect with the guys that I've worked with, that I'm allowed to do this and not have any issues. I'll tell you that podcast that I did, that was the first time that anyone even heard my story. You know what I mean?
Damn.
Because, like, I started writing the book in July. I reached out to the guy saying that I want to do this podcast, but before that I was a ghost. Even to people in my city, wise guys or whatever else, they didn't know what I was doing. They knew I was doing something. I get back to the cafe that I would always hang out at in Winnipeg,
Yeah.
my city, and these guys would be like, "Where were you this time?" I'd be like, "Oh, Puerto Rico, Italy." Da, 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 da. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And there was always some interest, but I kept my mouth shut about everything. I decided to do this because I think it's a great story. It's something new. It's something fresh, and it's something that's not typical. Like I said, it's not violent. It's not gangster. I'm not a gangbanger. I'm not a trigger man. I'm not a mafioso. I'm just a guy that made some money and met some people and lived a crazy life for about 7 or 8 years, and now I'm out of it. You know.
And see, I understand that you were just an associate, like you didn't ever become a made guy or anything like that. So, like that's what I'm saying. Like it's just interesting because I'd never really even seen like associates or anything even come out as well.
Mhm.
Because what do you tell me? Why do you think no one's talking from where you're from?
There's a couple of reasons. Like for one, like Canadian organized crime groups, not just Italians, but a lot of different organized crime groups, like ethnic groups, they're very silent. They're very quiet. They don't like it's not like American pop culture where like it's so like out there and like macho and everything. It's more like low key and quiet. A lot of the guys that I met in Canada, like you would never suspect that these guys are worth millions of dollars or have international contacts with cartels or whatever else. You'd meet guys, even myself, like I'll be the first one to say it, my face with the glasses and the baby face and stuff like that, I don't look like your stereotypical whatever. And I'm not. Like, let's be honest, I'm not that guy. But like, I don't even look like I'm some organized crime criminal, like at all. And even the way I talk nice. I don't, whatever. So the biggest thing I think with Canadians is we have this perception in, like I said, I say American pop culture because you guys are the king of it. Like you guys made it cool, you made it what it is. But really it's worldwide, where they think like someone looks a certain way or has to talk or whatever, and it's cool to do that. In Canada it's more cool to be silent, stay away from jail, not do any time, make your fucking money, don't flex and whatever. I'm not saying that every guy is like that out there. Every country in the world, every group in the world has its fucking idiots and the guys that are that like to flex or like to be known as violent or are trigger happy or whatever else. But yeah, I think the real reason is just because of silence, and then also some of them just aren't characters. You know what I mean? Some of them they don't want to write a book. They don't want to talk about it. You know what I mean? I wanted to because I think at the end of the day, it's just part of my reflection and my redemption process. I don't think that I'm going to get rich off this. I'm not on here to be famous. I'm not trying to do any of that stuff. I'm just trying to tell my story and heal from it and move the fuck on with my life afterwards.
I, no, I agree. I like that because you did change your life. You're out of it, and you got fed up with it at a certain point. Like that's what I was going to segue into. That's what we can wrap up on. Why did you leave the
Sure.
criminal life, and how have you done? How have you followed your path on redemption?
Perfect. So basically what happened was everything fell apart November/December 2022. But before that, I'd say a year before that, I was already leaving what I was doing at the time. And at the time, what I was doing money laundering. I was doing embezzlement still. I was doing some identity theft. I was helping migrants cross a border in Central and South America. I was doing stuff like that. But I had already decided that like I'm done. And the reason why is because I met a woman. And that when I met a woman who had a couple of kids, they weren't my kids, but when I met this woman and I had the first thing uh I had the one thing for the first time in a while that I had been chasing my whole life subconsciously, which was family, right? My parents had both passed away. I didn't have a good relationship with my family, and even worse since I got involved in organized crime and I was completely silent. I didn't talk to anybody anymore. I didn't hang out with family. I was out there doing my thing. So I meet this woman, and we met in a messed up way too. She was working at like basically a cartel club in Colombia, and she was being trafficked. And I got her out of there, and we ended up getting married like almost instantly, like 4 or 5 months later. And then I had decided before I even proposed to her that I'm leaving because it's different when you're on your own and you have nothing to lose. But like the moment that you bring a woman and her kids into the situation, like I have morals, I have standards, I have beliefs. I don't want to put anybody through that. So in my mind, I knew it was going to take some time, but I was on my way out starting then, which was like early 2021. So basically, what happens is we spend a year and a half together, uh, going through all these different countries. She was a Venezuelan refugee. I'm from Canada. We're in Colombia. We're in all these other countries. We have no real status anywhere. So we end up finding Paraguay, which is where we're going to move. And I'm basically going to take all my money that I have from, the life, the shit, and I'm going to invest it into legitimate businesses. And I'm going to walk away from everything permanently. So we're working towards that. And the way that everything ends for me, so remember, I'm already on my way out, but the way that it happened, I did not plan at all. So basically, what happened was I was in Colombia at in a city called Cucuta, which is at the Venezuelan border, and I was there with my wife and her daughter. We were celebrating my birthday there. We were going to spend a week or two together. Then they were going to go home, get the last of the documents that were needed for a permanent residency application in Paraguay. And then we were going to leave, and I was done. So I was like, I'm on my way out. But what happens is going into that trip, I fly from Winnipeg to Toronto, Toronto to Bogota, which is the capital of Colombia. I get a phone call out there from one of the guys that I had doing things for me in Panama. He just moved money around for me a little bit. If I couldn't meet with somebody, he would meet with them for me, that kind of stuff. So he calls me and he basically tells me that this safety deposit box that I had for about 4 years, the woman that ran the bank that basically ran the scam that was going on, hiding all this dirty money, she got arrested. And she had basically pointed out all of the safety deposit boxes with money, fake passports, guns, whatever, right? So she ratted without ratting, basically. She didn't say my name. She didn't know my name because I had that resident card and that's not my real name. So she gives them whatever that name. But the thing that sucked was I had 75,000 USD, more or less, in there. It's about 100
Yeah.
grand Canadian, right? And that was just like my savings. Like every year I'd dump like 10, 20 grand in there. And just, in case something happens, I go to Panama, I can get this money and whatever, disappear into Colombia or whatever. It's not a lot of money for us in this day and age. But like in Latin America, bro, $100,000 Canadian is a lot of money. It can get you a lot of things. It can give you a life for several years. So I lose this money, and I'm like, I'm sitting in Bogota at an airport right by the hotel. The next day, I'm leaving to go to the other city to meet my wife at the border, and I'm just like, fuck, there's nothing's happened in 4 years. I never had a single problem. And then all of a sudden, when I'm probably within 2 months of completely being out of that life, you know what I mean? The criminal life, I lose this money. And I'm like, fuck, like what shitty timing. I'm on my way out. And then I get to Cucuta, which is the city I told you about. We spend, some time together. I'm not really panicking because I have some things set up that are bringing me a little more than what I had in the deposit box, probably about 150,000, right? So it's going to take some time. It takes time to do these things, 3 to 5 months, but I'm good. I've got like 15, 20K on me. Like I got American dollars, I got Colombian pesos, I got Canadian dollars, and then I have some legitimate money in my Canadian bank account as well. So I'm not panicking. I like it fucking sucks, but I'm like, shit, man, like let's keep moving. Let's keep doing what we're doing. So we spend this time together, and then a day before my birthday, this is the even shittier timing. I basically get a cryptic text from someone that's working inside one of the companies inside of Canada that does all the embezzlement. And they basically tell me, there's nothing I can do. I'm sorry. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? So over this 2 week period, I was used to, in this one account, getting anywhere between $6,000 and $13,000 a week, right?
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
fucking money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially at my age, bro. Like I made this money when I was making the most, which was like, probably 2018, 2019. I'm like 30 years old making like $400,000, $500,000 a year, bro. It's fucking
Yeah.
crazy.
That is a lot.
And it was autopilot. Like I didn't have to do shit. I had to meet people a couple times. I had to shake some hands. Sometimes I'd have to send someone over if there was a problem, but like I'm not working at all, bro. Like it's just
Mhm.
fucking autopilot. So yeah, day before my birthday, I'm right by the pool. I'm in paradise, like it's my birthday tomorrow. We got this dinner planned. I'm hanging out with my wife and her daughter. They're swimming in the pool. I'm poolside getting a suntan. Everything is peachy. And then yeah, I get this message, and like I said, for a couple of weeks the money wasn't coming in. But this is sometimes normal. Like this was like 2 weeks, which is a little bit abnormal, but sometimes it might be a week late because there's payroll and there's everything else. So I wasn't panicking too much. But then when I got this text, I was like, fuck, like what is going on right now? And to make this short, I don't end up hearing what happened for another month and a half. So I completely had to change my whole game plan. I ended up sending my wife back to Venezuela with her daughter with a little bit of money, and I went to back to Bogota. And some things happened with her and I. Like we got into some stuff, and just miscommunication and a huge headache that I was dealing with, and we ended up walking away from the marriage, which is unfortunate. But she was a great woman and everything. I can't say anything bad about her. And even though we were only together a couple of years, it was a very intense, beautiful relationship. The best time in my life. Won't say anything bad about it, but it ended around there. So I'm in Bogota. I'm now down to maybe about $10,000 by now.
Damn.
And yeah, and so I lose this 150 plus that's coming in over the next few months, and my 100,000 back in Panama is gone. So like I said in the other podcast, within the span of a week I lose $250,000, which is all the money that I had. And I'm literally thinking to myself like, man, I'm thinking two things. I'm paranoid as fuck. So I'm thinking that somebody back home fucked up my whole operation because
Mhm.
my shit was like, solid for 7 years, bro. I didn't have an issue. And then all of a sudden, my deposit box and the company that I was using to embezzle is just everything just fucks up all of a sudden. So I became severely paranoid, and I started like running through my mind, like, who could have done this? What am I going to do next? And then the other thing that ran through my head was like, man, this is a win. And people will be like, how is this a win? You just lost all this money. It's like, wait a second, like I didn't go to jail, man. Like nothing bad happened to me. I'm unscratched. Nothing happened. I lost all this fucking money, but this is at the end of a 7-8 year hiatus where I'm traveling all around the world making fucking a couple $1 million, and I can walk away right now. You know what I mean? So it's like that was a very tough battle. What I will say, I'm gonna end it with this, like this the story with this is that it was very hard. Specifically, right after when I got back to Canada from Colombia, I went to British Columbia, and that's where one of the companies that I had money coming to me from. Um, I made contact with them, and there was some extortion, and I basically wanted my fucking money because I had like six figures in this company that was supposed to come out to me, didn't come out. And then this person lawyer contacted me, basically said, I know about everything. I know what you've been doing for the last few years. And if you try this shit again, we're gonna take you to, or we're gonna call the police or whatever it was. I have the email still. I took a screenshot of it.
Huh.
Um, yeah, it was basically it let me know right there. So I'd already like kind of like said, okay, I'm done with this life, but I was so desperate, and I was on my way out. I'm like, fuck, I can't live without that money. I can't go back to Canada with like, or back to my city, sorry, because I was already in Canada. I can't go back with nothing, so I need to get this money. And when I got that the letter from the lawyer, I literally said to myself, like, man, if you push one more time, you're going to jail. And you're going to go to jail for probably a few years. A lot of the stuff that I was doing is white collar crime. So it's not like, it's not like we're not serving 20, 30 years for this kind of stuff in Canada. But
Yeah.
I'm still probably going to do some time. So let's avoid that. Let's get away from that shit. And I'll tell you the truth, bro. It was very hard for me not to pursue that money. And even worse, it was so hard. Even to today, I'm not gonna lie. It's been about a year and a half almost. It's so hard not doing crime. It really is. Like I'm so fresh out of it. And like, man, everywhere I go, I meet people, right? I'm here on the coast right now in Europe, and like I've met with some biker clubs, some MCs, and all this stuff. And I'm like, fuck, it would be so easy right now, you know. But
Oh yeah.
I made my choice, and I'm sticking with it, you know.
What would you tell anybody that's in your position that may be fresh out and they're struggling?
Don't do it, man. There's more to life than money. Like peace of mind is what I'm after today. I don't care if I'm broke. I don't care if I never travel again. I don't care if, because that was the big thing for me, was traveling. That's what I love to do. I didn't buy cars, I didn't buy houses, I didn't buy jewelry. I traveled like a motherfucker, like crazy. I don't know anybody in my country, like other than stewardesses, that flew as much as I did, bro. So I can give all of that up for peace of mind, and that's really just a calm, regular, drama-free life. Like it's so much worth it. I think that there's other things that can happen to you that are worse than going to jail as well, right? A lot of the guys that get involved into more serious stuff and get involved with the organized crime groups, man, you have a chance to be killed, and sometimes
Oh
it's
yeah.
your best friend that does it. So
Yeah.
it's like this stuff that we glorify every day, that we love to watch, that we think is the coolest thing ever, that's not what it is. And I'll tell you that from personal experience. I was lucky enough to be outside of it, but I won't go into heavy detail, but my director out here used to be part of an organization many years ago, 20, 25, 30 years ago, when he walked out of the life. And the stories he told me were a lot of the stories that I heard, where it's like, it's not what you think it is. There's this romantic notion when you first get into it. It's about brotherhood. It's about making money. It's about people having your back and all this stuff, but that's not really what it is anymore. Maybe it was 50 years ago, 75, 100 years ago. But today's day, man, you can't trust anybody. You're doing a lifetime for crimes that you used to get a couple of years for. Like, it's not worth it anymore. You know what I mean? So just stay straight, take the long, hard road, and it's worth it in the end.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you've changed it around and that you're done with it and fighting those damn urges and just really trying to continue to live your life and do good things. Because look, I mean, you wrote the book, you've been on a couple podcasts now, and now you got this film that you may be doing, a documentary type of thing, man. So yeah, a lot of good things that you're doing now, that positive, keeping you busy and off of that mindset of wanting to go back, because you said, I mean, it's pretty easy to get back in, because you know how that's the way you thought for so many years. But now
Yeah.
it's trying to figure out, now you're learning how to avoid it and stay away from it and just not get involved with it, because you know it's a dead end. And that, I mean, like how it was for you. You lost all the money you had, all of
Hmm.
it, man. Just after all them years of putting in time and everything. But you
100%. And I love that. That's why I wanted to do the podcast with you, bro, is because you really focus more on the redemption and staying away from things. Obviously, I know, like, you're a bit of a historian. You love this stuff too. You love the
right.
history. But at the same time, I think that the message that you have behind it is a lot more important to people like me, where it's like, you know, this is not to glorify it. It's more to tell you stay away from it. It's like, oh, this is a cool story. This happened, but trust me, you don't want to get involved in this because it's full of heartbreak and disappointments.
Yeah, and that's the thing though. Like, people need to understand the background that you were involved with to understand the redemption part of it. Because if they
100.
don't, it's because it's just not as interesting if you don't know what they're talking about or why they changed their life or what they were involved with. So that's why it makes more sense, and it shows the more powerful message behind it. But yeah, I'd love to hear about both of the historian aspect of it, and then of course the main thing, the redemption side of it. But that's why I was like, yeah, let me reach out to Germano and see if I can link up with something, man. Because I watched the interview that you did, and that's how I usually find people, just looking through interviews and just go to towards the end and just hear if, okay, well, did they have some kind of redemption aspect of it at the end? Because
Of course.
sometimes there's not, but if you're, in your case, there was. So I,
Yeah.
I did appreciate the book. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I took the picture and I sent it to you. I left a
Yes.
review.
Thank you for that. Thank you for
Yeah.
supporting, bro. I appreciate it.
And that book will be in the video description for anyone that wants to hear more details about his life. He goes into way more detail in his book, so I'll
I
put that
appreciate
there.
it.
Oh yeah, no problem, man. Do you have anything else you want to leave the people with?
No, well, first I want to say thanks for having me, and this was a great conversation. You can see I like to talk a lot, eh? Like,
Oh,
but that's
perfect
good.
for a
That's good
podcast.
for a podcast. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I just want to say to anybody watching, like, just invest in yourself, right? Believe in yourself, and man, you're capable of a lot more than you think you are. Because even on the butt end of me leaving this life, the things that I've accomplished in the last year and a half are truly amazing. And other people look at it and they're like, how did you do this? And it's like, man, you just have to believe in yourself and take action. So now's the time to do it. And if you're in the life, get the fuck out, because pardon my language, but like you said, it's a dead end one way or another. It's gonna end badly. I don't know any happy retired gangsters, to be honest. They're all in jail or they're all dealing with a lot of other issues.
Legal issues, just I don't know, a
Mental,
lot
yeah,
mental, yeah, everything.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Well, thank you, Germano, and we'll end right there. Germano is very lucky to be able to share his life story and not be dead right now. He was very deeply involved with crime and knows what he did for those years of his life was a bad thing to do. He is now doing his best every day to redeem his name. If he can change his life around, anyone can. I mean it, seriously. You've heard his story, and you've heard a lot of other people I've interviewed on my channel just like him. A lot can be learned from all of them. Please comment any key takeaways that you got from this interview with Germano today. Also, please be sure to share it with anyone that you think will enjoy this type of content. Please don't forget to hit subscribe if you like my channel and the interviews that I do. And at the end of this video, a playlist will pop up of all the other Mafia related interviews I've done in the past. I had fun doing those ones and I enjoyed them, and I know you guys will enjoy listening to them, so please check them out. If you like to hear podcasts off of Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please check me out on there. The name of my podcast on there is the Invest in Yourself podcast as well, so all you have to do is just look that up and leave good reviews on there, because it really will help them promote my show more. So thank you again everyone for watching, and please stay tuned because we got a lot more good interviews coming out.